Here's a boulder that's been split in half, or maybe it had a fracture line there that came and got to the point where it fractured off, because that rock fits here as another part to this rock. Down here we have a nice rounded rock that's seen some tumbling. When was it rounded like that? And how long has its tumbling been going on, and has it come down the mountain since those great cataclysms? Well, that's an interesting question. But you see a lot of these rounded rocks in the valleys, whereas at the rock falls at the edges of mountains you get fractured rocks. So that's an interesting observation that might bear some thinking about. Since we see a whole lot of rounded rocks in riverbeds, and everybody would say yes, it's caused by river flowing and maybe some sort of a cataclysm of rockfall and tumbling in a distant past, but these are all things to think about. Here's an example of the rounded rock splintering, fracturing in predetermined fault lines related to the original crystallization, I believe. The other belief is that it's onion skin weathering that's occurred over millions of years of frosting and so forth, and wind and rain, but there hasn't been all that much in the way of cataclysmic activity for a few thousand years. We're here at the foot of the rocks, Gulaga rocks, or a huge granite outcrop here, like not unlike the Murphy's rocks we saw in South Australia. Big, huge, rounded granite forms, some onion weathering on the outside, or as it's called, but it's just where the fault lines, the crystal fault lines, lie, and it tends to shed off in like an onion skin. So these are absolutely spectacular. This is the one behind, and it too is rounded. You can see a fracture line through the top section there. The big thesis is, were these rocks formed and rounded by wind over millions and millions of years, or did they get rounded in a tumbling water, mud, gravel action? And since they're granite, did they remain here after being rounded up? That's the question. And here we see something interesting. There's a huge amount of boulders jammed in there between these two rocks, suggesting the strong possibility of a huge water flow which dumped them all through here and jammed them in there. And I've seen this up at Murphy's Rocks, the same thing, and we'll go and have a close look. Some of these rocks are well and truly jammed in there, and there's just a narrow gap between them, and then there's fracture areas here, and then there's your onion skin weathering. But here you see more evidence of a huge water flow coming through here, jamming these rocks in position. And there's one up there on the right. One boulder. One boulder up here on the right that's quite prominent. He's jammed right on in there. And the others too, and there's cracks and fractures up there. And this whole big rock here extends well down between, but nevertheless this particular specimen here, he's jammed right on in there. And he probably dates back, the position of that rock probably dates back to the cataclysm that caused this, which the Aboriginals say was a great flood, which I believe. I think the Aboriginals are right. Yeah, the Aboriginals are right, it was a great flood. And some other evidence from other written records as well. That was quite a climb up through there. But I believe that this area is a sluice, and it saw a huge amount of rock and gravel and water come through this interface here. That's looking up another 60-70 feet up into the mist. And here we see another example of a rock jammed in, or maybe it was fractured off. I'm not sure. In any case, looking up in the distance, we see our next rock specimen, which we'll go and have a look at. I think this is the secret women's rocks the Aboriginals talk about. Yeah. There's some more rocks up there in the mist. And here we see a rock which has lost its top. And I think this is a top right here, just fractured in that particular fault in the crystallization process. So that was where it tended to crack, and that obviously belongs to this. There's the rocks above, and here we see some of the flaring out toward the base that we saw at Murphy's Rocks, indicating the strong possibility of a huge flow of water that came along here, and certain rocks got jammed in the interfaces at various times. These are big upwellings of granite from below, and we're going to have a quick look down here to view the other rock formation from another position. And again, we're looking at rounding of the rocks. Certain other rocks jammed in between the interfaces of the big rocks, and rounding like sluiceways, suggesting the strong possibility of large flows of water, gravel, tumbling rock, and so forth. And here's another sluiceway here in between the rocks. And if we walk up here through this woody debris, we can see more rocks that got jammed in between. Jammed in between the rocks. And there's one great big long fault going down there. That's interesting. And here's some more of the onion skin weathering, so-called, but maybe it's just a fracture line, or a fault line in the crystallization of the rock, which took occasion to break away later on when moisture and frost got into it. And so here's a good example of more onion skin weathering, so-called. And this is moving on further to the other section of the rocks, and this part I believe is called by the Aboriginals secret women's oh, if I don't fall off this thing, secret women's rocks. So we'll see what else there is to see. Here's another interesting little interface here, like we saw at Murphy's Rock, a sluiceway in which the opposing rocks look like they at one stage were related to each other. They may have been the same rock, but it was fractured, and then somehow in a sluiceway the whole thing got rounded off and smoothed out, and then there's all this debris down here. Sometimes you'll see rocks jammed in there, indicating a great flow of water. Moving along this interesting little, looks like might have been a sluiceway. We see other sluiceways here and boulders in the interface between them. And this particular rock has a fracture line extending all the way down, but rounded to some degree, but not completely, because the interface isn't big enough to allow a big flow of rocks and debris to go through to round it out. But there was enough to cause a little bit. Here's the flaring again. The flaring down here, and we'll move on up into another interface here, and then we can see more of evidence of a huge flow of water with rocks being jammed in there, or rocks being fractured off and getting jammed in there. But there's plenty of evidence of both here. This resisted the flow of water, but there are some interfaces that are completely clear, but this one got a fracture and jammed itself up pretty good.
Which makes it even more atmospheric.
Absolutely, it's magnificent, isn't it? It's got to be telling a story. This is another area where perhaps the rock cracked in two, and the onion ring outer sections came down and jammed in here. And that could have occurred over millions of years, I suppose, yeah. Or it could have happened a little bit more suddenly. And over here, we're going to go and have a look at this one here, perched up way above. I was talking to a guy here, and he said that this place causes you to pause and to think and to ask questions. And it's a very, very special place. And the rocks are crying out and telling us things. Two big rounded rocks butting against each other. Another one underneath it. And another view of the one perched up there at the top. And the question was asked, you know, how did that happen? It's rounded. How did it get rounded? It's up there. How did it get up there? It didn't get dislodged and tumbled. Why didn't it get dislodged and tumbled? Was it too big? Too heavy? Was it granite? Hard rock? So this place is sacred insofar as it causes people to stop and think. Here's some more of the rocks, and it seems like there's outcroppings coming up out of the ground, just like we saw at Murphy's Rocks in South Australia. And they're granite, and so they resisted the flows of the flood, which I believe caused all this rounding and all this tumbling. And this is what might be part of the secret Aboriginal secret men's rocks. And these rocks are absolutely astounding. This is another rock formation. We're just continuing to walk back here and see more and more of these. Time is getting a little late, so I have to wrap things up. But we'll take a quick look through here. So this formation back at the top here. And again we've got some more monolithic looking, monumental looking rocks, I should say. And we've got rocks jamming the interface here, jammed in the threshold, and looking down into the fern trees, and then up toward this last section here. Looking back through the trees to the last formation that we saw. And the rock formations just go on and on everywhere you look. Some more of the more monumental or other type of rocks formations. Two big ones here rubbing against each other. And we'll take a little wander down by the wall here. This is up on the top of the rock, looking down at a rather dramatic cliff face here. And over there you can see an escarpment of vertical rock. We'll go for a wander up top there in a minute. And we're on the top of this rock, looking back to where we came from, and then we're looking over the edge of this rock here toward these dramatic granite outcroppings and toward the area which would have to be secret men's rocks. So, we won't say any more about that. We'll take a little look up here. And we're on the top here. And It's quite a drop down there. But we're looking down towards more and more of these rounded granite outcrops. And we could spend another 2 or 3 hours down here, but our time is rushing on and we have to get back. Absolutely magnificent. And these white gums here, ghost gums or whatever you want to call them. But absolutely breathtaking to be up here in the mist, see the rocks like this, telling this story of something that happened here a long time ago. Yeah, well, it certainly wasn't in recorded history, so we have to get legends and oral legends and written legends that we might be able to trust to give us further information as to how this might have happened. Before we go back, we'll take one last wander down this edge of this huge rock here. It's like a big escarpment. And we can see more of the rather monumental looking granite rock specimens out here, leading up to another huge vertical face over here through the mist. Absolutely magnificent. And we've run out of time, so it's time for us to get back. This is the pathway behind the toilet that leads up to the rocks that we just saw. No sign at all as to where they might be, but people on the trail seem to know. And that's probably all that matters. Coming back down the mountain, and this is one large granite outcropping, and down here at the base we see it start to walk into, it's hard to say what it is. That could be just dirt, or it could be getting into limestone. I can't really tell. Anyway, another big impressive piece of work. We're coming back down the mountain again, and here's that valley we saw before with the rounded boulders strewn across them. The boulders are all sorts of different shapes, but there is a significant number of them significantly rounded, suggesting what you would see with the smaller pebbles in a stream. The rounding that occurs in streams, geologists are quite happy to say that was caused by moving water and tumbling action and gravel and sand smoothing out the rocks as they tumbled in the water. But the big boulders, see some of them down there are pretty big, and they haven't been tumbled at any time recently, have they? They've been there for a long, long time. So the question is, at what point do we say the pebbles in the stream are rounded by water, and then say, the big boulders, no, they weren't rounded by water, they were rounded by wind and whatever over millions of years. So that's an interesting little valley with these rounded boulders. And over here we see a rock with a concavity in it, not all that different from what we saw at the Murphy's Haystacks in South Australia. Only it was the one we saw was 60 feet tall. That's that story, and then down here we see the rounded rocks indicating the strong possibility of a significant flow of water that came down through here in a massive flooding stream to tumble and round out these big boulders.